My name is Jonathan Gray. I didn't believe what could happen to someone like me, but what happened made me rewrite all the rules. My story begins in the quiet town of Silver Pine, where I lived with my family. In the evenings, we often walked in the park, where there was a strange silence that inspired peace. One day, returning from work, I came across a mysterious person standing near one of the old trees. He was wearing a dark cloak and a hat that obscured his face. I felt my insides getting stiff, but I decided not to pay attention to it. A few days later, the city was shaken by the news. A girl from our area had disappeared. Her name was Suzanne. The police started an investigation, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this mysterious person I saw might have had something to do with her disappearance. I started my own investigation looking for information about this person. It turned out that we never had anyone like him in our town. Gradually, I came to the fact that this person could be connected with a number of crimes that happened in neighboring cities. The next night, I saw the man again, but this time he was following me. I quickly returned to the house and locked the door. Fear gripped me, but I understood that I had to continue my search. My mission now was to understand who this man was and what he wanted from our town. These first parts are intended to set the mood and interest the reader. You can continue to develop the plot by adding new details and characters to create a confusing and scary story. If you want more specific ideas or help, let me know. I decided to check the places where that man could appear. One such location was an old abandoned factory on the outskirts of the town. I had to cross a long and dark corridor to reach a room where no human foot had ever set foot. The factory was quiet. Only the echo of my steps broke the silence. I found old dusty documents and tools, but nothing that could explain the man's presence. Suddenly, I heard a crack in the darkness and a sharp sound, as if someone was running quickly up the stairs. I decided to hide behind a large metal box when I heard the sound of footsteps again. This was the man who also seemed to be searching for something in this forgotten place. My heart was pounding like never before, but I had to stay quiet and calm. The man stopped for a few minutes and spoke to himself, expressing his anger and frustration. I heard him mention Suzanne's name. This gave me even more fear and confirmed my suspicions that he was involved in her disappearance. I came home deeply stressed. I called the police, but when they arrived, the factory was gone. This was just one of many cases where missing objects appeared and disappeared without a trace. The next morning, I learned that another person was missing. This time, it was my old friend, Richard. I was shocked and knew that this maniac was becoming more and more dangerous. I set out for the factory again, but now I was prepared for any dangers. The factory was empty again, but I found new traces. Small objects that clearly could not belong to factory equipment. I picked them up and found that they were pieces of personal belongings, photographs, keys belonging to missing people. I decided to learn more about the history of the factory. Research has shown that this place was once used for illegal activities. I knew that if I wanted to solve the mystery, I needed to learn more about what was going on here. I met with a local historian who told me that the factory was closed after a series of crimes that took place there many years ago. This could explain why the maniac chose this particular place. It could be a hiding place for his crimes. I began to notice that the maniac was leaving certain marks that could be interpreted as clues. With each new clue, I was getting closer to the solution, but at the same time, I was getting more and more immersed in his scary world. One night, I received an anonymous, threatening letter. The letter was written in red ink and contained the words, "You step on my toe and this will be your last study." I knew I had become dangerous to the maniac, and that made me even more focused on my search. I decided to talk to the relatives of the missing people. They were willing to share any information that could help in the investigation. One important clue was new information about a strange person who appeared in their stories. Among the evidence, I came across details of an old road that led to a remote forest. This road was often used to export illegal goods, and I realized that this could be another link in the chain of events. I went into the forest at night, armed only with a flashlight and courage. Having got out to a remote place, I came across a hiding place where I discovered terrible finds. Parts of clothes, bloody traces, and records that confirmed my suspicions. I was brutally attacked on my way home. Someone was trying to kill me, so I couldn't continue my investigation. I survived thanks to chance, but I realized that now I was being hunted not only by a maniac, but also by other unknown threats. These parts will help develop the plot and keep the reader in suspense. You can keep adding new twists and events to create a dynamic and exciting story. If you need help with further development or anything else, let me know. I was finally able to reach the police and tell them about the findings, but it turned out that my story sounded too far-fetched. I had to spend a lot of time to prove the seriousness of the situation, and while I did it, the maniac left less and less traces. One of the things I found hiding in the woods was an old notebook. The book was filled with detailed descriptions of names and events, but written in cipher. I decided to try to decipher the text, hoping to find new clues. Decoding turned out to be more difficult than I thought, but eventually I was able to understand some of the text. It turned out that the maniac was using an old method of keeping records related to his past. This gave me an idea of his mental state and possible motives. Among the records, I found a name and address that did not match any of the available lists. I decided to visit this address, hoping to find something important. It seemed that this address could be related to the activities of a maniac. Upon arrival at the specified address, I found an old, run-down building that looked like it had been abandoned for a long time. The interior was full of junk, but I found a few personal items that probably belonged to a maniac. On the floor, I came across another note that contained details about the next victim. It was the name of one of our neighbors, and I realized that the maniac planned his crimes in advance. I contacted the police again, but their response was not quick enough. The night I received another anonymous threat was the most terrifying. Graffiti appeared on the door of my house, announcing the next plan of the maniac. I couldn't understand how he could know my location, but it made me feel even more in danger. I decided to take matters into my own hands. Leaving my footprints in a safe place, I began my journey deep into the woods where I believed the maniac's next hideout might be. I took with me only the bare essentials: a camera notebook, a flashlight, and a gun. At the site, I found a new part of the complex system of tunnels that the maniac probably used to move and hide victims. It turned out that the tunnels were part of an old mine that had not been used for a long time. In one of the rooms of the tunnels, I found a terrible discovery: documents confirming the connection of the maniac with several influential people who could cover up his activities. This explained why the investigation was so complicated. Having found new evidence, I decided to try again to contact the police. This time I had irrefutable evidence, but it was clear that the maniac was at work again. While the police were gathering, I received new information about the next potential victim. I went to the home of the potential victim to warn her of the danger. It turned out that she already knew about the threat but could not imagine how to act. We decided to find a way to protect ourselves together. We only have a few days left before a possible attack. We installed traps and alarms and also organized security. I remained in constant anxiety, knowing that the maniac could appear at any moment. One morning, I woke up to the alarming sound of a siren. I managed to get to the victim's house in time and save her, but the maniac disappeared again. My investigation now became even more dangerous, and I knew I had to make it before he left town. I got another message from a maniac. He writes that he's planning a big final act, and all I have to do is find him before he can put his plan into action. It turned out that he left clues again. The clues led me to the old library, which was closed for restoration. I looked in through the window and saw several suspicious persons who had no right to be there. I decided to proceed with caution. I entered the library through the back entrance and began my search. Among the old books and manuscripts, I came across a secret room where there were notes and photos of a maniac that confirmed his planning of attacks. It turned out that the maniac was using the library as his command center. After finding this, I decided to share the information with the police. But when I returned to them, it turned out that one of the officers was involved in covering up the maniac. I escaped from the police station and went to the hiding place where I predicted that the maniac might be. My suspicions were confirmed when I came across a new victim that was already partially covered. I found a way to save the victim, but the maniac managed to arrange another plan that was even more terrifying. We had to act fast to stop him before he could carry out his terrible plan. This development adds more intrigue and tension to the story. You can continue to introduce new twists and delve deeper into the motivations and plans of the maniac. If you need more help or want to continue the story, let me know. The victim I rescued turned out to be a key witness. Her name was Melanie. She told me that the maniac held her captive and forced her to watch his abuse of others. Melanie knew of several places where he could be hiding. Melanie and I decided to go to one of these places, an old abandoned hospital on the outskirts of the city. The hospital had a reputation as a cursed place, and therefore no one visited it. The entrance was closed, but we found a way to get inside. The hospital was dark and scary. The sound of our footsteps echoed off the walls. We carefully moved forward, looking for traces of the maniac. In the basement, we found a room with medical records belonging to various patients who had disappeared. We found a room with records that indicated experiments that had been done on patients many years ago. It turned out that the maniac had a medical education and used the knowledge to torture his victims. This discovery was horrifying, but gave us more insight into his methods. Melanie found a door that led to another subterranean level. There we found another hiding place where the traces of the last victim were left. It turned out that the maniac had visited this place recently. We heard footsteps and realized that someone was going down to the basement. We hid in one of the rooms and saw the maniac approaching the hiding place. He looked angry and nervous. Melanie was holding back tears, but we knew we couldn't let him notice us. The maniac left without noticing us, but we decided not to risk it and follow him at a safe distance. He was on his way to another room where we found a plan for his future attacks. It turned out that he was planning a big act in the center of the city. We realized that we needed to act quickly. We contacted a new police officer who could be trusted and told him about the findings. He organized an immediate security measure in the city center. While planning the operation, Melanie revealed more about her captivity. She remembered that the maniac was using code words that could be important. We realized that these words could be the key to unraveling his next move. We gathered a team and went to the place where the maniac was planning his next attack. It turned out to be a big public event. We devised a plan to catch him red-handed and save possible victims. The operation began, and we positioned ourselves in various positions to keep an eye on the crowd. We waited impatiently, looking for a maniac among the people. Melanie helped us identify him based on her memories. Suddenly, we noticed a suspicious person who matched the description of a maniac. He was holding a backpack in his hands and was behaving strangely. We decided to act immediately and crept up to him, preparing to arrest him. When we got closer, it turned out to be a decoy. The backpack was filled with trash, and the suspicious man turned out to be just a random passerby. The maniac anticipated our actions and created a distraction. We quickly realized that a real maniac might be somewhere nearby. We split up to find him in the crowd. Melanie was the first to spot him. He was near the stage, preparing for his crime. We rushed to the stage, trying to stop him, but the maniac noticed us and tried to run away. A chase began, and we chased him across the entire square. The crowd was in a state of panic, and this made it difficult for us to do so. The maniac hid in a building next to the Maiden. We surrounded the building and began combing each floor. On one of the upper floors, we found his hiding place, where the tools and materials for his crimes were left. We discovered that the maniac had left a booby trap. We had to act quickly to demine it and avoid an explosion. Our efforts were successful, but it made our task even more difficult. After finding new evidence, we realized that the maniac was planning another big crime. He left clues leading us to an abandoned building on the outskirts of town where he was going to set a trap for us. We went to this building realizing that it might be a trap. Every step could be the last, but we could not back down. At the site, we found another cache with clues pointing to his ultimate plan. It turned out that the maniac was going to kidnap a large number of people and hold them hostage. We again approached the police to organize a massive rescue operation. It was dangerous, but we had no other choice. We broke into the building where the hostages were and began the search. Every room could be a trap, but we proceeded with caution. We found the first hostages and began the evacuation. The maniac tried to escape again, but this time we were ready. We surrounded him and engaged in a fierce fight. He was strong and dangerous, but we were able to stop him. After the arrest of the maniac, we learned that he had accomplices who helped him in his crimes. We continued our investigation, looking for these accomplices and destroying their network. The maniac turned out to be extremely cunning and left behind many false traces. Each clue led us to new mysteries, but we did not give up and continued our search. Melanie has become a valuable ally for us. She knew a lot about the maniac and helped us recognize his tricks. Her testimony was key to our investigation. We found a new hideout of the maniac, where the records of his crimes were left. It turned out that he was active for more than 1 year, and it turned out that he had been active for more than 1 year and had detailed records of each of his victims. These recordings were key evidence that could help convict him and his accomplices. One of the entries pointed to an old abandoned motel outside of town where he planned to meet his accomplices. We immediately headed there, knowing that this might be our last chance to catch all the criminals together. The motel looked run down and abandoned. We went inside and started searching. In one of the rooms, we found traces of recent occupation, food and clothing left behind, indicating that someone had been there recently. Suddenly, we heard footsteps and whispers from another room. We crept closer and saw 2 men discussing their plans. They were accomplices of the maniac. We quietly detained them, preventing them from escaping. One of the accomplices turned out to be very talkative and began to give all the information. He told us about other places where the maniac could hide his victims and about his final plan, a mass abduction at a big festival in the city. We immediately went to the indicated locations and found more victims who were saved thanks to our quick response. We also learned that the maniac intended to use the festival as a cover for his operation. We have again contacted the police and festival organizers to ensure maximum security measures. We have placed undercover agents around the perimeter and installed surveillance cameras. The day of the festival has come. The crowd was huge, and the tension in the air was palpable at every turn. We kept a close eye on all suspicious persons, knowing that a maniac might be among them. Suddenly, we noticed one of the suspicious men moving towards the stage. We recognized him as one of the accomplices of the maniac. He was holding a bag in his hands, which could be dangerous. We decided to act immediately. Having approached the man, we detained him and checked his bag. Fortunately, it only contained camouflage items, but it distracted us from the real threat. A maniac took advantage of our distraction and infiltrated the festival. We noticed him later, when he was already among the crowd. He looked confident and calm, but we knew he was planning something terrible. We pursued him, trying not to lose sight of him. He approached the stage where the main event of the festival was to take place. We realized that this could be the place of his attack. As he approached the stage, we saw him take the explosives out of the bag. We rushed to him, but it was too late. The maniac noticed us and tried to activate the explosives. Fortunately, one of our agents managed to knock him off his feet and snatch the explosives from his hands. We detained him and disarmed the explosive device. The crowd panicked, but we managed to avoid disaster. The maniac was arrested and taken to the police. We gathered all the evidence and started preparing for the trial. His accomplices were also detained and confessed to their crimes. After the arrest of the maniac, we learned more about his past. It turned out that he was a famous psychiatrist who used his knowledge to manipulate and abuse people. His accomplices were former patients whom he subjected to his will. The trial was long and complicated. The maniac tried to use his knowledge to avoid punishment, but the evidence was too convincing. He was found guilty of all crimes and sentenced to life imprisonment. Melanie became a hero of our city. She survived a terrible captivity and helped us stop the maniac. She also received support from the community and started a new life helping other victims of similar crimes. Our city gradually returned to normal life. People felt safer again, but we always remembered the horrors we experienced. We have created a special group to investigate such crimes so that it does not happen again. I was promoted and became the head of the new group. My life changed, but I always remembered those moments when we fought with a maniac. It gave me a new purpose to protect people and prevent such crimes. One day, I received a letter from Melanie. She thanked me for everything I had done and told me about her new life. She started working in an organization that helped victims of violence and found her calling. Melanie also wrote that she had new information about other criminals who acted like our maniac. She invited me to join her team so we could fight evil together. I decided to accept her invitation. We have created a new team that has started an investigation across the country. We have become known for our unwavering determination and success in the fight against crime. Our investigations led us to new cities and new challenges. We fought the most dangerous criminals using our experience and knowledge. Our goal was to make the world a safer place for everyone. One day we came across a case that was connected to our past. We learned that someone was trying to replicate the methods of our old enemy. It was a new challenge, but we were ready for it. Investigating a new case, we realized that the criminal had a connection with old events. It was a student of our Maniac who decided to continue his business. We knew it would be a tough fight, but we couldn't back down. We began the pursuit of the new criminal using all our resources. He was cunning and dangerous, but we knew his methods and could predict his moves. Every action we took brought us closer to his arrest. We followed him in one of the towns in the south. His actions became more and more daring, and we understood that he was approaching something big. Our investigation led us to an abandoned factory where he had set up his base. Preparation for the operation was thorough. We surrounded the plant and began searches. The criminal turned out to be well prepared. He created numerous traps and shelters. We moved forward slowly, avoiding danger. In one of the premises, we found still alive hostages. Their situation was critical, and we knew that time was short. We immediately organized their evacuation without stopping the search for the criminal. We came across a criminal in one of the last rooms of the factory. He was armed and ready for battle. A tense firefight ensued in which we tried to neutralize him without casualties among our men. In the end, we were able to detain him. He turned out to be the younger brother of our old enemy. His distorted sense of duty to his brother led him to a criminal path. We arrested him and took him to the police. After that, we began a thorough investigation of his actions. We found a lot of evidence that confirmed his guilt and connection with old events. His trial was swift and he received a life sentence. Melanie and I realized that our fight against evil is not over yet. We continued to work together, investigating new cases and helping victims of violence. Our team has become known for its unwavering determination and success. We knew that there would always be those who would try to harm others, but we also knew we could stop them. Our mission was clear: to protect the innocent and fight evil. And we continued our work, remembering all the horrors we experienced and all the people we saved. All the people we saved. All the people we saved.